Takes Grit webinar. Thank you so much for being here. This is where we teach you how to grow your business in these constantly changing times. And here at Spark Partners, we develop leaders who create lasting business success through our courses, coaching, and content. Cool. And it's Friday. Hope everyone's feeling good. You're here to learn how to grow your business on a Friday. You're already on the right path. So definitely give yourself a pat on the back for that. All right. So my name is Sydney King, and I will be moderating today's event. To ensure you get the most value from the hour that we spend together, we have split today's time into 3 segments. So it'll be the introduction, the presentation, and then we'll have a nice Q&A at the end where everyone can share their questions. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we'll try to get as many questions as we can by the time we get to that segment at the end. All right, let's get started. So we are going to introduce first Adam Hartung. He is a world-leading expert on, hold on, let's get the next slide going. Real quick. This is interesting. Okay, cool. So first we're going to introduce Adam Hartung. He's a world-leading expert on disruptive innovation. While at Harvard, he worked alongside Clayton Christensen, the father of the concept of disruptive innovation. Adam has written over 400 articles for Forbes magazine and remains a global expert in what it takes to grow a business through innovation. Adam is a founding partner of Spark Partners. And I'm Sydney. As I mentioned, I'm a host on Spark on the Street, which is a new segment on Spark Partners that we started about a month and a half, 2 months ago. It's super, super new, super, super exciting. It has been such a success so far. This is where we interview growth-minded business leaders and entrepreneurs to discover their keys to success. And I'm also a model, an entrepreneur, and a business owner myself. And last but not least, we have Manny Taran. He is an award-winning entrepreneur and business executive. He's been responsible for $250,000 in sales and also founded and grew Teran, a product development company for the aerospace, medical, and energy markets. Manny has received numerous awards for his leadership, entrepreneurship, and sales acumen. Manny is the managing partner of Spark Partners.
Yeah, I'll make it a little correction. That's $250 million.
$250 million.
$250 million, exactly.
That's a big correction. $250 million. Awesome. Yes. Cool. So now it is time, now that you know all of us and you're familiar, it is time to get started with the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sydney. I think I'm going to kick it off here. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is why is growth important? Why do we focus on it? Why do we talk about it? Why do businesses need to be looking at ways to grow? And the simple fact is, if you're not growing, you're dying. There's lots of research that shows this. Adam and his whole background really dove into this over the past 25 years. And the companies that survive are the ones that are actually focused on growth. The ones that are the living dead or end up going bankrupt are the ones that their eye is not on the growth ball, so to speak. And so there's really 3 areas here where we kind of split it up into relevancy, longevity, and value. And it really has to do with that idea of long-term success. And, you know, one thing we talk about a lot, and we really do this on our podcast and some of the other things we do, is we talk about the world is changing constantly. And certainly the trends that are out there, the ones we talk about constantly as well, is you've got to be really focused on where they're going so that you can align your business to those major trends. And we're going to spend some time later on to dive deeper into those trends, because once you start to understand that correlation between trends and success, and really how it shouldn't be that hard to run a business in these times are pretty amazing times. You know, and also longevity. If you want to build success, it's a lot easier than to build success for the long term. And certainly the value that you'll create for your customers and also for yourself. So all the times are tumultuous times. There's no time that isn't, there's not anything changing. So let's go to the next slide here. Me being kind of a visual person, I'm an engineer by education. as well as Adam, by the way. I like to kind of simplify things, and I kind of broke it down into these three major points here. Growth is required for survival. If you want to go back there,
Yes.
Go back up to the other. Growth is required for survival. There's nothing in business that will survive the long term if you're not growing. We're talking about inflation. We're talking about competition. There's a lot of things that'll eat you alive if you're not really thinking about that growth mindset. And the whole idea here with this growth mindset is really, it has to be part of the way you do business. There's a lot of talk about corporate culture, and I won't go too deep into this because it can be polarizing, but people talk about corporate culture as the way things are actually done in a business. You know, you've got your employee manual, and then the way things are actually done is your corporate culture. And we tend to celebrate it as it's something like, oh, they have an amazing corporate culture, but there is a dark side to it. And maybe Adam can touch on it a little bit later. The second thing about growth and why it's important is that it creates opportunity. When you are in a growing business, there is opportunity in abundance. There is areas for your employees to rise in their own career path. There is money for bonuses and for trips. There's money for acquisition. There's money for lots of things. And, you know, when you're in that in that trajectory of growth and you're really taking advantage of the opportunities, it's pretty amazing. And then the long-term success is the sort of the final thing that we talk about. I've been party to a lot of different kinds of businesses, including one that I started myself, and I ran it for a while. And one of the things that I learned through my own experience, having grown a company from 0 to 3 million in sales in about 4 years, very hyper growth, is I learned that to survive or to grow and to grow for the long term are two different animals. And I listed out here 12 different, very, very iconic companies. And it's pretty simple to see that there are the winners and there are the ones that are either dead or dying. And if you look the ones on the right, for instance, Sears, when I was a kid, there was nothing better than Sears. I mean, it was a whole like destination, you know, me being from a small town, we'd like drive into Tucson and go to Sears. Of course, Toys R Us is gone. Sears is barely surviving. They have a few dozen stores and they're basically going to die. And IBM, you know, they had their heyday, the whole concept of you never got fired for buying IBM. And so these are all, and of course, Kodak, the biggest thing for me with Kodak is they actually invented the digital camera. I don't know if you guys know that, but they didn't take advantage of it because of some of the things that Adam's going to talk about in the next couple slides. GE, another company that had its heyday and is now basically on the ropes as well. Now, if we go to the ones on the left, we could easily spend hours upon hours talking about each and every one of those. But one of the cool things that I did, just to kind of toy around here, so the market cap is, of course, a measure of the kind of the worth of the companies, you know. So the market cap of the 6 companies on the left, the market cap is equal to, again, it's a little bit of a stretch, but think about the GDP of a nation. So this is how much a nation produces every year. The GDP, if you will, of the 6 companies on the left would be the 3rd largest country in the world. So you've got the US, you've got China, you've got the collection of these companies, then you've got Japan and so forth. So if you think about that, if you put that into perspective, it really makes you think about what are they doing right? And how should I really look at my own business in order for you as a business owner? What should I be learning from them? And so this is where I'll hand it off to Adam, because we're going to go into some areas here that might be uncomfortable. And I really want you to sort of think about the greater good of you want to grow your business, and you're going to get to really have an opportunity right now to suspend some of your reaction, because I've talked to business owners and they basically say, nope, that's not going to happen. But we've studied this. We know this. This is how it's going to be. So Adam, take it away.
Sure thing. So one of the things on those companies that Manny was talking about, the ones on the right, we all recognize that they're in a failed or failing situation, but they also all were once the leaders, right? You can look at all of them and remember how they were a leader in their marketplace. The question becomes, how did they miss it? What went wrong? What happened in those organizations that they didn't sustain, that they didn't continue to be wildly successful, even in those instances, as Manny said, where they often invented a lot of the technology that displaced them. So now, Sydney, if you'll go to the next slide. So we started off doing 1,200 case studies back around the turn of the century, and we kept working on it. We now have about 14,000 case studies. And one of the things we've learned is that in business, what we primarily do is we teach people how to optimize the business model that exists. So in the early days of the organization, you'll have a value proposition. My customers, want information. And so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to help them get information. I want to accumulate it and provide the information. If you did that in 1900, to disseminate the information, you'd have to put it in books. So your way to deliver the value you have is through the book publishing, right? So that gets you an encyclopedia. But over time, what happens is new technologies come along, the regulations change, new opportunities emerge, and those start to displace. But you say to yourself, okay, that's easy to understand, Adam. I can see where, we got new technologies that came along, and we could have, the encyclopedia could have done something more to put its information out, but they didn't. In fact, those 6 companies, all of them failed to see what was happening. And so it was worth trying to kind of dig into this. I know that the natural tendency as a human is to say, well, the executive team kind of went stupid. They weren't paying attention. They were fat, dumb, and happy. So we put these sort of personalized efforts or statements against them. The truth is that through the case studies we've done, these people really suffered. When an organization isn't doing well, if you've ever been around an organization where sales are flat or declining and they're having to go through cost cuts, layoffs, people are getting their bonuses trimmed or even eliminated, it's just not a pleasant place, right? So you start saying, they really should have been willing to make change. They should have been ready to say, hey, look, let's go ahead and do the next thing. Let's go ahead and grow. So it was worth spending a few years trying to understand why they didn't. And the reality is that we actually get very comfortable doing what we've always done. Once we've built a business model and we know how it works, it's get up every day and you don't have to think that hard, to try to continue to do the business you've always done. Whereas if you've constantly in the past printed books and then somebody like me comes along and says, hey, transfer your business over onto the internet, you don't know anything about the internet. You don't know anything about technology. You don't know how that works. And so you're very uncomfortable saying, well, how would I do that, right? I mean, I know what I'm doing today and I know how my business works today because we build this status quo. And in fact, if you think about business practices for the last 40 years, a lot of what we've done is tell people, figure out your business and then really get good at it. Understand your core and focus on your core. So keep doing more of what you've done and building up that status quo. And we actually build cultures around that. I mean, for years, we said, hire for people that are like yourself. And we actually promoted not having diversity in our organization. We were okay to say, we lip service to diversity, but really we wanted everybody to be pretty much the same. So we could fit into that status quo and everybody could feel comfortable. And we'd say, you know what, I'd like to grow more, but I don't have the tools. I don't know how I would grow more. And somebody could say, well, get out and think outside the box. And we'd say, I'm ready to think outside the box. But the problem is you're in the box and you never have time or the effort or the ability to think outside the box. So you just keep working harder and harder and harder, doing what you've always done, even as the business starts to struggle. There was no doubt that Sears and Kmart were struggling. I mean, year after year, you could see the stores were being closed. They were having trouble paying suppliers. There wasn't inventory on the shelves. Employees were quitting. There were no advancement opportunities. So it was really a terrible situation. But yet trying to move that organization online seemed risky. And so they'd say, well, I don't want to go do that. I don't want to take that risk. I don't know anything about that. And the reality is that there was more risk in the status quo than there was in making change. If Kodak had made some effort into going into digital cameras, they might have ended up, being the companies, the handheld devices that we have in our lives might have Kodak on them instead of Apple or another competitor. But they were comfortable in that status quo, and they felt like it's risky to go to that next step. And what we have to do in our minds is start to change that. We have to start saying, you know what, we're building up risk inside the status quo. The status quo has its own risk, and it's that risk from doing the same thing day after day while the world is all changing around us, and we're not changing with it. And the longer we persist with our status quo, the more risk we develop because we're not keeping up with the world, until we're as out of date as the Encyclopedia Britannica, or we're as out of date as Kodak, or as out of date as BlackBerry. Icons of the past that we'll never see again. Next slide, please. So the reality is that we think of the world as changing in a linear fashion. And so we keep thinking, if I just do a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, the long term will take care of itself. Right? So if I just more, better, faster, cheaper, more, better, faster, cheaper, keep my nose to the grindstone, keep after it, put in place a total quality program of some kind, measure everything we do, measure how our products perform, measure how we develop, measure how we market, measure how we advertise, measure down to the point of how quickly we're able to process invoices and use ERP systems and CRM systems, and just keep doing. If we just can do a little bit better every quarter, we'll do great. That's how we think change happens, but we know now it doesn't. Thanks in very big measure to a fellow named Clayton Christensen, who wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, and he published it in 1998. And what he discovered in the research he did at Harvard Business School was he found out that, yes, that more, better, faster, cheaper effort is really a requirement. You do have to really work hard at making your business better all the time, but that is not the way to sustain your business. That just keeps you in the game. It's like ante in a poker game. If you don't put it out, you can't play, but you're not going to win if all you do is ante up. You're going to go out there and play hand after hand until your ante goes away. Because what happens is eventually there's something big that happens in your marketplace, something that really changes the entire marketplace entirely. And that is a disruption. And he coined the term disruptive innovation. And those disruptions, they don't have to be innovative in terms of like a technology. They could be innovative in terms of a new way of billing, or a new way of outsourcing, or a new way of insourcing. It could be just a dramatic number of different kinds of ways of changing your business model, but it changes the way people think about your business. So let's take, for example, the steel industry. America was built on steel, is a phrase that was used for many years. Then we got to where we had these giant companies like Bethlehem Steel and US Steel. They were really dominant companies coming out of the industrial era. And then they went away. You say, well, how'd they go away? Well, offshore steel. No, it really wasn't offshore steel production. What happened was they got so used to making steel, they figured out how to make the best steel in the world as cheaply as it could possibly be made. But the thing was, you needed a giant, massive plant to do that. And so when you wanted to buy steel, you had to place your order 4 months in advance. And then you could tweak it a little bit as it comes towards delivery time. But you had to place the order a long time in advance, because these big integrated steel mills required that in order for them to make you this world's best steel at a really good price. Obviously, the problem is a 4-month forecast could be accurate or inaccurate. If you over order, then all of a sudden you're going to get more steel in your yard than you need, and you slash your orders for the next quarter. You get what we used to call the bullwhip effect, and now, oh my gosh, I got way too much steel. What am I going to do? The other problem could be you underordered, and now you can't make enough product for your customers, and the products aren't on the shelf because you couldn't get enough through your factory. So you're watching that, and you're saying to yourself, the steel company saying, measuring the quality of the steel, measuring, how quickly, how accurately it's delivered to per the order. But along comes another company, and they said, you know what, we're going to make steel, but we're not going to do that in an integrated plant. We're going to have a little plant. And we're going to put this little plant just 10 miles down the road from your plant. And our lead time on a delivery is 1 week. And so what they say is, our steel might not be quite as good as US Steel or Bethlehem Steel, but we can deliver it in 1 week. And consequently, you don't have to worry about this forecasting problem. And people started to realize that, hey, they could run their business entirely differently if they bought from these little mini mills, that would be a different way of doing business. And it would be much more convenient. They wouldn't get stuck with inventory. They wouldn't have too much inventory, too little inventory. They can manage it better. And that was a big disruption. It changed the way people thought about how the plants should operate. And since they were able to see that disruption, the mini mills start to flourish. And the big companies, the big US mills are like, well, we're losing our orders. We don't understand why. When people said, well, I'm ordering from this mini mill down the street, they said, well, their steel isn't as good. It's not the quality of our steel. And people said, it doesn't matter. I can get it in 7 days. I'm not stuck with, thousands or millions of dollars of inventory of steel I don't need, or I'm not in a problem where I can't make for my customers. It's much better for me to buy from the people down the street. And so now we have this disruption in the business. There's not a great innovation in that, right? We didn't invent a new metal or a new steel or some great new technology. We just changed the way it was made. And that's how change really happens. This doesn't come from little tiny incremental change all the time. We have that happening on the baseline and it sustains our business, but it's these big, big disruptive innovations that get us in trouble. So as we see Sears, what happened? You know, Sears didn't quit being good at running stores. It's just we didn't need them. We didn't need those stores anymore. We had Walmart that we could run to for the stuff off the shelf, and all of a sudden we have electronic commerce. And you know, Sears never migrated to electronic commerce. They just didn't go there. Kodak got fixated on pictures that you printed. You know, you have to run down to the kiosk to get your pictures printed, and they had the Kodak film, and they had the Kodak paper, and the best processing equipment, and they just missed the fact that we would be very happy with digital images, and we could use digital images. And so that change in how we were ready, as customers, we were ready to take advantage of those digital images, just blows right by them, and they miss it. And now we start to understand what's wrong. Most of our companies, we really put all of our energy, all of our resources in figuring out how to make and sell what we've always done. And we tend to put no resource into looking at the world around us and saying, how could the world of the future, how could it be totally different? How could it change? How could we move away from having a telephone in our house connected to a cable and everybody just have one of these devices? In the old days, people would thought, you know, AT&T said, you'll never give this up. You give up the landline because the quality of the cell phone will never let you do that. But we quickly learned that mobility was much more important than the quality of the landline phone. We all wanted the mobility, and we took the phones, and then the phones just kept getting better and better until we get to a whole new way of operating, which is that new line on the top up there. And now the way is gone, and it's gone completely. So it's not that we go dumb. It's not that we're complacent, really. It's really that we get too fixated on the business as it's always been. We get too stuck in the status quo. And when these other things are happening around us, we don't bring them into our business. We might see them. We see how they're happening. We might incorporate them in making the old business model better. And we might say, hey, that's a good idea for your business, but I keep running my business the way I always have. Next slide, please, Sydney. So what we have to do is start realizing that we're never going to be successful long-term if we live our whole lives selling what we've had to the people we've always known. That's inevitably we're going to become irrelevant. We're going to go away, right? Now you can be the world's best horseshoer, but who cares, right? Who cares when the car comes along? And that's something all of our businesses face. You know, we call them now existential crises, right? That the business could be gone entirely because one of these technology changes. So we have to start pushing out into these other markets, these other opportunities. I don't know how many of you drove to work today or get out in your cars very much, but you probably inevitably see a Midas or some other type of a brake shop out there, right? But the reality is that we're quickly moving towards electric cars. And by 2030, more than half of the cars sold will be electric cars. Electric cars don't use brakes. They have motors on the wheels. And so when you push on the accelerator, you go. When you let off the accelerator, the motor slows down. You've all turned the motor up and down on a fan. The same thing's happening on the electric car. So the brake pads and all that mechanism that we use in an internal combustion car, they aren't really necessary. So what does that mean? Well, it means all of a sudden, all these brake shops, they're not going to have any business in 10 years, right? So what's going to happen to the brake shops? What's going to happen to Bosch and Wagner and people that make brake pads? That's been a great business for a long time, but we can look at the future and we know where the market's going. We know it's going to electric cars, yet the people are still stuck down in that selling brake pads to people that have gasoline powered cars. We have to figure out how to push off into doing new markets, push off into new products, new solutions, put our resources in the things that can grow and change our resourcing pattern. Instead of constantly putting our best people in the old business, put our best people in the new business. Instead of constantly trying to figure out how I can cut the price by a penny or bundle 3 products and offer them at the same price to defend and extend the business I've always had, we have to start saying, how can I go out and offer new products that will meet the needs of customers as the world is changing? Next slide, please, Sydney. So what we have to do is realize that there are these big mega trends that we need to follow all the time. Those are on the right here. Things like the big demographic bubble we have. You know, the baby boomers are getting old, they're retiring, they're not going to work anymore. but they didn't have enough kids, and we shut off the immigration tap. And so we're quickly getting to the point where there aren't enough workers. And everybody I talk to says, I don't have enough workers in the world. Can't get anybody hired. Well, of course not. But that's a demographic problem, and you're not going to solve that demographic problem. So realize that and start saying you're going to have to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, other techniques to try to solve that trend. If you're the first one to build on that trend and say, hey, I'm going to take my business all robotic, you have a much greater probability of survival than if you're spending all your energy trying to figure out how to hire people when you're in competition with the rest of the world to do that. Figuring out how to be environmentally aware. I don't want to get in any arguments about whether climate change is real or whether or not climate change is, man-made. That doesn't matter to me. What does matter to me is people are environmentally aware. People are paying attention when they buy products as to what kind of packaging it has. They're paying attention as to how the products are made. They're paying attention. Today in the electricity world, a lot of people have the choice between checking a box for traditional energy or for sustainable energy. And they'll pay up to 50% more often to get at least part of their power from sustainable energy. Are you building on that trend? Are you making it easy for your customers to say, hey, I like that product because that's sustainable. That company's environmentally aware. I like that they recycle their products. I like that they clean up those messes. Just think about the things that happen in environmental awareness. And those are going to be around for 20 years. Are you building that into your business? And right now, today, this year, 2022, you have the opportunity to be much more successful if you go out on trends that have been sitting there for a few years that are driving growth. Things like mobility. Are you making your customers more mobile? Are you helping use artificial intelligence so that their life is easier, right? So that you can solve problems for them, that they don't have to solve it for themselves anymore. Do you allow them to work asynchronously? Hey, old days we had to get together for meetings. This is a synchronous meeting we're having now. But you know what? As much as I appreciate all of you being on this webinar, we know in the back of our minds that there are going to be 10 times as many people that will watch it recorded. They're going to, because we get busy. And so we need to be asynchronous in our world. So when Manny and I and Sydney would be wasting our time if we didn't record this and make it available for people to watch later in an asynchronous manner. Are you making it possible for people to be working asynchronously? And are you using the gig economy? A lot of people don't realize it, but today almost a third of the US economy is the gig economy. It's being measured. So as much as we might argue about whether or not Starbucks employees should be part of a union, that's not the problem. That's not the issue that we really should be paying attention to today. We should be realizing that the reality is most people want to be a gig worker of some sort, or they at least want a side gig. Working from home during the pandemic has only driven that push now to the point where the Commerce Department and a lot of other people that collect statistics on demographics and how we work are saying that by 2030 will be at least 55% of the entire US economy will be gig based. Are you using gig workers? Are you, instead of hiring somebody to do 4 jobs, like they might sell, they might write brochures, they might carry products around, are you parsing that out to 2 or 3 gig workers that can specialize on it and give you give you a better result? And are you doing things for gig workers? Are you offering services for the gig workers? Do you make your product and service something that a gig worker could find very valuable and useful? If you are and you promote that gig world, then you're going to find you're going to be more successful. So this is turning our eyes outside and saying, if we want to grow our business, it's not more, better, faster, cheaper, selling what we've always sold to the people we've always known. That is a small world. Instead, we have to look at the big world, look at these trends, and incorporate these trends into our business. And if you start doing that, and you do it today, looking at the big trends down the road that drive your business for 10 years, and look at the things you can do today, 2022, that'll get customers closer to you, that's how you sell more stuff. That's how you sell more stuff. Manny, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. So as Adam mentioned, these trends are all in motion, right? One thing that you'll get as being on this webinar today is we're going to send you a copy of, I know that some of you already have it, but we'll send you a copy of a report we call Trend Report 2030. It's the top 66 trends that are driving the economy for the rest of the decade. And you can just think about your own business and apply it to that 66 list to see how aligned you are to that list. The more you have in alignment, the more propensity you have for that success. We like to use this analogy of putting your canoe in a river, a fast moving river, or a swamp, right? Or a lake. And if you're in something like Adam said, right, the whole idea of brake pads, you never think of that brake pads might have a shelf life. in their existence. I think there'll come a time in the next maybe 40, 50 years where there'll be absolutely no brake pads. Even the big semis, even the big trucks will be electric, and there'll be a different modality that we don't even know about yet. I had somebody tell me the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody who's a little bit older than me, and they basically said something that to the effect of this. They said, pretty much everything's been invented already. And I started to laugh thinking, somebody might've said that back in 1920 as well, or 1950, when we had, the TV, we had radio, we had all these things already. And this world is not slowing down. This world's not going to stop. And what's interesting, the reason that this is called Growth Takes Grit, it's up to the people on this call and your people and your that are just like you, in order to drive that change and be part of these trends in order to grow your business. Next slide, please, Sydney. So the idea here, there's a definition of grit that you might have in your own brain. I pulled this off of, I think, one of the online things here, but it's basically this personality trait that is possessed by individuals who demonstrate this passion and a perseverance towards the goal, no matter what. My grandmother says, if you fall down 7, get up 8, right? It's that idea of keeping on, irrespective of what's happening in the world. But I will give you a pretty substantial caveat, and this is why we broke it down into the GRIT down below. The caveat is that perseverance and passion are amazing, amazing values that I really appreciate in a lot of people. My own grandmother as well, who's still living, thank God. But here's one thing that is the caution with this idea of just pure grit. Pure grit without the GRIT below it is going to drive you mad. If you are hell-bent on, we'll use the example of the telephone, for instance, Adam. You can never go wrong with having this telephone plugged into the wall with the cable, the quality. And no matter what, your grit, your passion, your perseverance is to make sure that you as a telephone provider are selling to the world, right? That grit, even though it's amazing, isn't going to take you anywhere. I'm going to pull out my trusty Sony Walkman that I talk about a lot. If my passion and my perseverance is all about selling this to the world, no matter what, I will liquidate my 401k. I will drop whatever I have to do to make sure, because I'm a gritty person, quote unquote, I'm going to make this happen. It's not going to serve you. I'm sorry. You'll just be a broke, gritty person. But if you want to be a successful, gritty person, then look at the other things here. The growth mindset is what's going to take you to that next level. And I talk about a lot of the self, because I've been there in the needing to grow my company. I had a voracious payroll, right? I've had to write personal checks to cover payroll. I've had all those things, right? And you have to have a growth mindset. You've got to remain focused on the success of the organization, irrespective of what obstacles are confronted in front of you. And that means also, so that growth mindset means that you'll have the ability to move away from something that's not serving you. Resilience goes back to that idea of you fall down 7, you get up 8, right? And that has also to do with being adaptable to where the market's going. There's a trend here, by the way, growth and mindset, which means you can go to a different market or different product or service. Resilience, same thing. Innovation is all about giving customers what they want in new and better ways. You have to do that. And what do they want? Well, that's all driven by these trends. So keep this in mind. And when you get the report, look against your own business to see how many of those you can check. And if you only have 4 or 5, you might want to really look at how many things you can add to that list, because at the end of the day, you want to be remembered as a successful, long-lasting company, and not one that is a topic of discussion of what not to do. Next, please. All right, so here are a couple of things to keep in mind in how you actually deploy this. And it all starts with yourself. It starts with you as the leader of your organization. You as it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or not. It means, leadership doesn't mean necessarily position. but you are a leader in your own right, and start with yourself. Do you have what it takes to go against the status quo, push back against the loud crowd saying, what are you talking about? I'll give you a quick example. When Netflix decided to walk away from their DVD as a delivery business, remember that? The stock market and the shareholders went crazy. They were like, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, like, what are you doing here? Why are you going to kill that cash cow? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And of course, the stock fell like crazy, and there was all this things that happened. But what they didn't see behind the scenes is that the executive staff made this decision to go into this sort of relatively new thing called streaming. So let that marinate a second, right? They didn't kill the cash cow. They just kind of cut its head off. And while it was still bleeding out, they went into a different market, and that's how they survived, and that's how they thrived. And they did it again when streaming became a commodity. They did it again. They went in the direction of creating their own production studio. And just FYI, in case you're on Jeopardy tomorrow, Netflix is the largest media company in the world. They've surpassed the Paramounts and the Warner Brothers and all the other ones out there. They've surpassed them by far, and they're not going to stop. They've got another arrow that they're putting in their bow right now, and they're going to strike again with the world of electronic gaming. Second thing, your team. The team is a very interesting thing because, now you're talking about you're dealing with human dynamics. And so why it starts with yourself is because you've got to be ready to go and really get your team behind this. And we'll talk about our course in a little bit, but our course, we talk about an idea of getting buy-in. How do you actually get people rallied around a concept? You have to ask permission. So you got to really focus on the team, because the team is really what is at the end of the day going to drive your growth internally. Unless you are, Picasso, you're not going to do it on your own. You're going to have a team around you. And even Picasso had a team, by the way. And then the last thing is really think about your customer. If you are a brake manufacturer, if you are Warner or Bosch, and you are not thinking about what's next, and you're not thinking about scrapping that whole brake business, then really you're not going to survive. So you need to think about what's the right customer that I should be going after. Bosch is a big global conglomerate, so there may not be the best example, but if you have a singular product and you don't move to where the customers are going, you're going to die. And believe me, Bosch does a lot of business in brake pads, so they're not going to, it's going to hurt. All right, next slide, please.
Wow.
I'll let you take over here.
Yes. What an incredibly valuable and insightful presentation, Adam and Manny. Fantastic job. You're really teaching the entrepreneurs of today to be forward thinking, which I think is incredibly important, because we can't just keep staying in these same cycles and expect growth and expect better. I heard this quote. It was like, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So totally. I love everything that you guys said. So now as Spark Partners, as I mentioned before, we develop leaders who create lasting business success through our courses, coaching, and content. So this is awesome. We have a course called Think Innovation, which we'll talk more about in our next slide. It's about understanding your customers, aligning with trends, scaling your business, all the good stuff. And then we have our coaching, which is our executive coaching, which is only available on a very limited basis. And again, helping you align with trends and grow your business to the maximum potential. And then, of course, we have the Business Trendsetter podcast. We upload weekly podcast episodes. So go ahead and check that out on all platforms. And then, like I mentioned earlier, our brand new segment, Spark on the Street, which is us. It's a video. So this is we upload our full videos on Instagram. You can go to our Instagram account for now, and we're going to expand the platforms that we upload them on in the very near future. And we interview growth-minded business owners and entrepreneurs and discover their keys to success. And I'm actually the host on that. And yeah, it's been a great success so far. We've learned so much from these businesses. And then we also provide some ebooks as well.
Fantastic. So I'll just talk about the course real quick, and I hope you got value from it. I hope you have your questions ready to go because we're excited to answer them. But really, what really drew me to Adam's when I met him 3 years ago or so. So I was part of Vistage. He came in to give a talk. I was towards the tail end of the business that I had at the time, and what I really found impactful in the conversation is really the systematic process that really, for me, developed into a broader scoped philosophy of how to think. And so we call it Think Innovation because it really helps you to think like an innovator. Elon Musk thinks differently than most people, right? He sees opportunities where there is no apparent opportunity, but because he follows trends, because he looks at what's happening not just now, but actually planning it into the future, he's able to align himself and the business in that direction. So our master class, it's all online on demand, and it's a way for you to really dig deep and to change your own mindset to become an innovator. There's also a cohort model available that if you have a team that wants to come in together, we'll talk about how to do that. But it's really cool because we come in at the beginning, we kind of understand your business, you take the course on your own, and then we come back a number of weeks later and we kind of have a midpoint conversation. How's it going? And then the real magic is at the very, very end, we come back and help you to implement what you've learned in the course. There's about 12 hours of content in the course. There's worksheets, exercises. So it's a really good thing for you to look at for your business. And if you're interested, we usually offer it at $997, but because we're excited to have all you here, we're giving it to you at $697. So if you have an interest, email me directly and I'll give you the promo code. And again, if you have any questions about that, I'm very passionate about it because it can really change the trajectory of your business. I think is that it?
Awesome.
So where are we on Q&A?
Yes. So now we are very excited to hear all of the questions that you guys have been accumulating in the chat. We actually just got someone else that's in the waiting room. That's funny. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at your guys' questions and answer those for you. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. I think we have about 15 minutes left. All right. Cool. Let's go to the Zoom.
I think if you stop sharing there, you could probably see everything. There we go.
Cool. Perfect. Let's go to the chat. So if you guys have any questions, feel free. This is your time to just blow up the chat with any questions you have about Spark Partners, any questions about the content that we've spoken about. Please just drop those right now. We have about 15 minutes to answer anything.
So one of the questions that we get oftentimes is, look, I have a small business. I have a medium-sized business. How do I practically think about what a company like Netflix or Amazon does as it pertains to my own business, right? How can I adapt, or how can I learn from an Amazon if they're a ginormous company and I run a small bake shop that makes cupcakes? Like, what can I actually learn? So I'm going to take that, Adam, and I'm going to punt it to you.
What I always say, there was once a company in New York that did become globally famous with cupcakes. They were so successful. I don't remember the name of the company now. They were successful for about 2 years, and now I don't even remember their name. Well, why? Well, because people wanted cupcakes for a while, but then they decided they wanted something else, right? They shifted. So I don't know what the great breakfast food is today. At one point, it was donuts from a company out of Ohio, whose name escapes me as well. The objective, what we're trying to get across to people is that it's easy to fixate on your business. There's always ways to improve your business. But in doing that, we often get out of step with the customer, because the customer is looking at how they are making money. They're looking at their own needs. And we start to build a gap, an invention gap that happens between us giving them something and them wanting something. So their needs, we meet their needs initially. That's why we're successful. But then as the world changes, their needs change, and other people come up with better solutions to fit their needs. And people come up with solutions for new needs, for their unmet and their undermet needs. So if you're running a shop and you're selling baked goods, that's great. But do you know what people want? Do you know what's on their minds? Are you watching the television shows about cooking and seeing what's innovatively happening in desserts and what people might be interested in? Because, do you need to move towards desserts that are gluten-free, or what kinds of things are happening in your customer base? So that's what an Amazon is doing. They're constantly looking at the customer and saying, what are they doing? What do the customers want? What do they need? And that's the big lesson we can learn from that, is that all of us should be paying attention to our customers, paying attention to technology, paying attention to how the rules are changing, and saying, how could I adapt? How could I use that to help my customers feel better, to help them make more money, to help them have their undermet and unmet needs fulfilled?
Great.
Okay, so we have a question come in. So that'll be, our first question is, what are some areas or trends that a business should examine to direct their own innovation?
I would certainly say that right now, I would sit down and say, how old is your customer base? And are you appealing to a customer base that will be long-lived, right? So take a look at the demographics around you. We've got a lot of companies out there that are selling their products almost exclusively to people over the age of 55. While we may be living longer, we don't tend to make more money in our retirement than we made earlier. So that's a shrinking pool, right? If Harley Davidson's an example, caught people at a young age. They were riders, but now young people don't ride as many motorcycles, and those that do mostly buy them that are made from Japan. So how old is your customer base? Pay really your customer base and see what's happening with the demographics of that. Right, and see what's happening in terms of immigration and how immigration could impact your customer base. And that's the first one. I'd say everybody should have that as part of their planning. We tend not to do it. We don't think about it, but it's really crucial, especially right now. And then the second one I would pay attention to is how I could be more ecologically aware. I mean, you can sell more stuff today just by saying your packaging is recycled packaging, or that your packaging is very recyclable, or that you use sustainable ingredients in your products that you sell. Promoting that can help you. All kinds of environmental aware opportunities are out there. If you can take water out of what you do. There's a company we've dealt with that they reduced the amount of water that was needed in a process by about 80 or 90%. And the product wasn't inherently cheaper, but when they went to customers and said, hey, we're as good, we think we're a little bit better, we're not going to necessarily be able to sell to you cheaper, but we'll cut your water consumption by 80% in your process. People love that idea, right? So how could you be helping people with this ecological awareness that's going on today? Those two trends are two that I think everybody has to pay attention to. The third one, I would be applying artificial intelligence. That's a wide open territory, machine learning and AI, where we're going to have just all kinds of opportunities to solve problems where we haven't before, because we threw people at the problem. Now we need to throw AI at the problem. So, I mean, I'd certainly start there. Those are three really big trends I'd apply to anybody out there, no matter what business they're in.
Awesome. Great answer. Really hone in on your customer, and that'll depend on which trends are the best ones for you to align with. Sounds good. All right. And then the second person just wanted to say no question. They just really want to thank both Adam and Manny for the Hop on Trends topic. They think that topic was very important to highlight based on how fast the world is moving based on growing changes. So just a quick thank you.
Yeah, we have another question here. It looks like with respect to how can I monitor trends that could affect my business? Specifically, we get asked that question of how do I monitor trends? And there is a myriad of ways to do that, right? You can certainly watch the news, you can read the news, you can stay in that domain, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's really central to understand. And within that, there's a whole spectrum of where you should be getting your news. And there's a lot of places you should really consider. There's going to be the polarized left and the polarized right sources. So you want to try to find ones that are sort of in the middle. Or what I like to do is I like to look at all of them, and you get kind of like a holistic idea of what's happening. But one way that I like to really look at these trends is talking to customers, talking to what's happening in the industry, talking to, as kind of Adam mentioned, the opposite. I talk to young people. I talk to what 15-year-olds are doing right now, because they're really, I happen to have a son who's 15. So they have a good idea of what's going to be happening and what's driving the economy in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, he's a hardcore gamer. Both of them are. And what they do and how they're doing it is going to be defining the way they go in the future.
One of the things that we do in business schools, whether they're undergraduate or an MBA program, is we teach people how to look at internal data. You know, we teach them how to look at sales data, product data, accounting data, things that come out of our ERP, CRM systems. That's really what we do in schools. We don't tend to teach people how to look at trends. How to look outside and how to accumulate trends. So now we go build our company and we think, oh, we should have folks that are helping us sell more stuff. We have sales, marketing, operations, accounting, and we feel comfortable putting people in all those jobs. But if you think about it, why is it you don't dedicate resource to looking externally and tracking trends? Here you've asked us, what trends should I follow? Okay, we can give you some ideas. But what I would tell you is if you had somebody that lived in your business and said, hey, look, let's think about these trends. Let's think about what's going on out there. And that was their job. It will change the way you look at your company. I had a client once that made nail guns. All right. And so they started saying that they were going to get fancy. They called themselves a fastener company. And then they could do nail guns and screw guns. And we finally got around to doing was they dedicated a person to be their external focus. And that person, after a year, had come back and developed entire business models and opportunities around glue, which is a fastening product. It turns out that in manufactured housing, they use a lot of glue. And he also started talking about things like Velcro and how you could use these reusable things like the hook. It's called a hook and something. Velcro is a brand name, but that type of technology. He started looking at all the really other forms of fastening technology. And then he started to look for applications for those, which expanded the company, not only product-wise, but into whole new customer markets at the same time. So don't disregard the idea that you should actually have people dedicated to doing this, following trends. We feel okay about people doing accounting and marketing. Why is it we don't feel good about the other one? Well, because nobody told us we had to when we were going to business school. And nobody told us we had to in the old ways we ran our business. Yeah. But I would tell you, you're going to be a lot more savvy and you're a lot more likely to sell more stuff and to be more profitable and go, be sustainable long term if you would start to think of having one person dedicated to following trends and feeding things into your company so that you discuss these things, discuss what's happening in the world, and start to have meetings that are designed around what are the trends and how are they likely to impact us? What will the future look like?
Yeah, if you think about, actually, that's a really good segue that I want to kind of mention before we take the next question. Think about the executive that was in charge of that person's on their who's their boss. Basically, they came up, hey, by the way, Mark, we're here. I went and spent a year looking at the industry, and I found that glue is the new way of doing things. The new nail gun is glue. So at that point, you as the executive can take one of a couple routes. You can either say, you're fired. We're a nail company. We're not glue. We don't know anything about glue. Go away. You're gone. Or you can take a different mindset. You can say, okay, tell me more, and you can learn more. And if you really look at this, and this is, again, a little bit more on our course and just in general, look at the true value of what you're providing to your customers. What are they gaining? When you sell nails to a whatever manufacturer, what you're selling, really what they get is the iron and the whatever, the actual nail, right? That's what they get. What they gain really is something fastened. And so if you really look at that value behind what they get, if you look at the gain, then that's a really good clue for you to start looking at what it's going to take for you to shift and tap into that broader market. Any other, Barry, you've got a question. You were unmuted here a little while ago.
No, my general question was, what do you see as the, we're talking about the future. What do you see as the future profile of the entrepreneur?
Well, again, I think that in the old days, we always thought an entrepreneur wasn't successful unless they had 40 employees and, generated $200 million of revenue and had a building somewhere with an office in it. The gig economy is changing that in a big way. I think now today you have entrepreneurs that are one-person shops. I run 3 businesses. We have no employees. Everybody's a gig worker in those businesses. And then I look at those employees and I say, are you working for yourself and just doing an employee job, or would you like to be an entrepreneur in your own right? Could you grow what you do in terms of working with multiple people and doing more things? So I think entrepreneurship, in fact, is going to blossom big time with all these technologies. The fact that we have Zoom technologies where we talk to each other, we have platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn to help us get connected to additional resources. It makes it easier for us to be an entrepreneur than we ever could in the past. You don't have to raise as much money. You can start much smaller. You can go off and get a flexible manufacturer to make a product for you instead of having to build a manufacturing plant or lease one. So I think the future is, again, this adaptable type of an individual that's looking at the marketplace and saying, I want to bring something new to the marketplace, get it out there, get it started. And then that entrepreneur can choose to stay with that business longer term, grow the business, or they can often find somebody who will be willing to buy it and they can go back into that very early innovation stage. So you can have entrepreneurs now, I think, run through the whole life cycle, but just the whole sense of entrepreneurship, there's never been a better time. This is the best time ever.
I agree. And I'll bolt on a little bit extra because for us as entrepreneurs, one of the things that we see a big need for, and I mentioned this a while back on one of my posts, I forget where it was, but in addition to what Adam said, you also have to be a media company of one. And you also have to be a software company of one. And you also have to have a good understanding. Doesn't mean you got to have a full command of how to program. This means you have to understand how to get the process that you're working on out to the world. In the case of the media company, you've got to be the face of your company no matter what. If people don't know you, they can't flow you, right? There's no, you're not going to live in some dark cave somewhere and expect to be an entrepreneur. You're going to have to put your face out there. And if you don't have that skill set, you're going to have to hire it or find a way to do that. And this is a good testament. If you look at where things are going now, Adam and I kind of joke, and we talk about this at Spark Partners, that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson might be the very last super mega star in the world. He might be the last one, the last $100 million guy. Why? Because of the dissemination of the social media influencers. For every one Dwayne, and by the way, he's an amazing guy. I like him a lot. For every one of him, there's going to be 100, maybe 1,000 micro influencers. Rather than making $100 million, they're going to be making 800,000 or maybe $1 million or whatever. So it's all changing. And again, I look at my 15-year-old son and my 14-year-old son, and I look at who they're excited about. Does anybody here know who Mr. Beast is?
I do.
Maybe a few of you do. Jim, do you know who Mr. Beast is? You're muted. Yeah. He is a YouTube megastar that is, he gives away cars, and he's like a little mini version of The Rock, and he's Mr. Beast, and he's a major megastar. What are the questions that we have? I think one more question and then we can wrap up for today.
Yeah, I think we've hit time. And also, everyone, just to know, Manny practices what he preaches. You got to check out his TikTok. It's awesome, Manny Taran. But yeah, actually, there's no more questions. Everyone's just saying how great a presentation it was, and they're agreeing, and just thank you for this wonderful and valuable presentation. So is there any last thoughts from you guys?
Go ahead, Adam.
Thank you very much. Good entrepreneurship to everyone. Let us know how we can help.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Adam and Manny. Terrific presentation.
Thank you for everybody for being making time on a Friday. Go out there, have an amazing weekend, and as always, keep on hustling.
Thanks. Enjoyed it. Thanks,
Cheers.
guys. Appreciate it.